known but bravest victims of sexism are the suffragists. What is a suffragist? Suffragists were girls and women fighting for their right to vote. Why did they want this? Because they knew that there was no other way of being heard by the society they lived in. This was the best way they could work to make the future of children better. Before the Civil War, women in America started getting into politics. They fought against slavery and alcohol. Then they began to fight for the right to vote. After the Civil War, the Constitution of the U.S. was changed to allow black men to vote. Many women thought it was unfair that they were not included. Starting in 1910, some states gave women the right to vote. And 10 years later, after proving that they could work like men in World War I, they got the right to vote in 1920. Well, I started noticing how I was never going to be heard in society if I didn't stand up for my right to vote and the other women as well. Well, I've always thought that a woman's opinion is just as important as a man's. Well, as the Constitution had changed the fact that African Americans got the right to vote, I imagined that they could do the same for females. I have always been very determined, but I got to admit that for sure I had a hard time. It took a lot of courage, but if I didn't have the suffragists with me, it would have been terrible. First of all, I went and voted the election even though it was illegal. Then I got arrested and never paid the fine because the law was being unfair. Then I created an organization for suffragists.
Feed the baby, grease the car, and powder my face at the same time.
Susan B. Anthony was born on February 15, 1820 in Adams, Massachusetts. She was important because she fought hard for women's suffrage and was the president of the National American Woman Suffrage Association. As a result of her efforts, the 19th Amendment to the Constitution was approved in 1920. She came from a politically active family and gave speeches for anti-slavery and anti-alcohol movements. Anthony went to a rally to give a speech for temperance. She was not allowed to speak because she was a woman. This event made her realize that women were not going to be taken seriously if they did not have the right to vote. In 1872, she voted in the presidential election even though it was illegal, and she was arrested for it. The court found her guilty and charged her $100. She never paid the fine. She died in 1906 before the laws were changed. But her work was so important that in 1979 her portrait was put on the silver dollar coin. Curly's Wife connects the theme of sexism since she shows how a woman was treated in the ranch. In the book of Mice and Men, Curly's wife was not only the only woman in the ranch where she lived, but also seen as a sexual object whom the man did not respect. Sadly, this woman could never stand up for herself throughout her life. When she died, the men finally saw her as an actual individual and accepted her for who she was. It's pretty obvious that she died without standing up for her rights. Instead, she took on the role that society gave her. Even though she was accepted for who she was after she died, she never died as anyone because she didn't have the privilege to die as someone. In the same way, Susan B. Anthony's work was only fulfilled after her death. This shows how sexism destroys a woman's beauty, making her look powerless. Scout in To Kill a Mockingbird does not think that she should be treated differently because she's a girl, even though her brother refuses to play with her when she's being too much like a lady. However, many people like Aunt Alexandra think differently and discriminate against her for being a tomboy. Sexism is the worst thing ever. It makes me feel so sad because I always get mean comments on how I should be or how my personality has to be, and it's just not good. Basically, my family makes me feel hated. My brother Jem does not want to play with me because he says I'm being too much like a girl to him. My Aunt Alexandra never leaves me alone with all the acting like a lady thing, or not running wild, or even the clothes I wear. If I was brave enough, I would tell them to back off because I can do whatever I want. Maya Angelou was a beautiful woman who was definitely another example of sexism. However, she shows us that this life experiences made her more powerful throughout her life. Let's watch some videos that prove it.
I thought we were at a romantic place out by the bay and so forth. And he hit me with his fist.
Whoa.
And he had been a prize fighter. He hit me, he beat me. And sometimes I'd go unconscious and I'd come to and look at him, and he had a big plank and hit me, and I'd go out again. The next thing I knew, I was in the back of his car, and he drove to a restaurant in San Francisco at that time called Betty Lou's Chicken Shack. And he pulled up there and he called the men over and showed them. He said, "This is what you do to a bee who is cheating on you." I think with my son, I hope I raised a person, a man, who knows how to treat a woman. Mm-hmm. That's very important. So he felt that being male was important, but no more important than being female. And that's the way I raised him. And they say he's a good husband. Mm-hmm. Many people wonder where my secret lies. I'm not cute or built to suit a fashion model size. When I start to tell them, they think I'm telling lies. I say, it's in the reach of my arms, the span of my hips, the stride of my step, the curl of my lips. I'm a woman, phenomenally. I walk into a room just as cool as you please, and to a man the fellows stand or fall down on their knees. Then they swarm around me, a hive of honeybees. I say, it's the fire in my eyes, the flash of my teeth, the swing in my waist, the joy in my feet. I'm a woman, phenomenally.